welcome to Studio Snack, a monthly food podcast about design. I'm Lydia Thornley, a designer, illustrator, life sketcher and terrible gardener.
And I'm Narciso Leda, and I help businesses to find their way through branding.
Why are we mentioning gardening? Well, April is peak seed sowing month, and we like that seeds are both snacks and the beginning of something, food and design. Narcissus, you have a garden for the first time. How's it going? What seeds are you sowing for the kitchen?
So I don't know if I'm a terrible gardener or not because this is my first experience, but I'm quite surprised how easy it's been so far. So I sown some plants already, and I haven't had any major casualties yet. So I've got some spinach, some lettuce, some tomatoes, some radishes that I'm attempting now. I think, unless it's a weed, I'm growing carrots. So it's going all right.
Yeah, I think all the snails have gone from your garden to mine. I think that's what's going on.
I hope so.
But in snacks, seeds are everywhere. Sesame seed, crackers, pumpkin seeds, poppy seed, bread and cake, sunflower seeds, energy balls, granola, tahini, Chinese cooking, you name it. And Narcissus, you had a really good point about many things we eat and drink that we don't think of as seeds.
Yes, like as you say, nuts are actually seeds. Like hazelnuts, peanuts are seeds. Popcorn is actually an exploded seed, if you think about it. And coffee is actually a ground and brewed seed. I've also been thinking, because lentils or beans, that you can plant them really easily. We actually eat them as protein, but they also seeds. And if you eat like a bowl of rice or oats, that also eats seeds. Even cornflakes is just flattened corn.
Very true, very true. And doing some nerdery on this has been exciting. Seeds are possibly the oldest snack we've ever talked about, according to Google's AI. Stone Age as part of the Paleolithic diet. But they weren't a snack as we eat them. They were food available to forage. Though to qualify that, Google has a small note at the end saying generative AI is experimental. And actually, I always find this a starting point, and I find the really interesting stuff in the crunchier sources. So, Liverpool University has some really interesting stuff. In Iraqi Kurdistan, there's a site linked with Neanderthal and early modern humans. And here they found wild grass seeds, grass pea and wild pea ground and added to cooking, possibly as bread or porridge. Oh. National Geographic writes about the shift from hunter-gatherer diet to farming and trade, and the gradual mismatch that happened over the centuries between human genetics and diet, and how scientists now are looking back at those earlier diets to see if they're a better fit, which is, I suppose, where the paleo diet trend came from. And that includes seeds, chia seeds, flax, nuts. And as ever, there are many academic standpoints and areas of research looking at the variety of Stone Age people, and with them diets, foraging mostly by women, and the plant-based end of things. Seeds are so vital to future resilience that there's a global seed bank, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, which opened in 2008, and I found a piece about it in Time magazine. It contains 13,000 years of agricultural history.
What?
Well, as farming has got bigger, the number of varieties we grow has actually got smaller, and that means that what we grow is more vulnerable to disease and drought. So we need those historic resources to help us solve problems in the future. There are gene banks all over the world. The Global Seed Vault is a sort of backup drive for all of those. And unusually, for this, there's a direct crossover in creative work too. Seed pencils, which are used on recent sketch activities locally, when they get too short, you just plant them.
And that's so cool. There's also as well all the paper that if you throw away, then kind of it's got seeds and it gets planted, isn't it?
We use that on some sketch walks too.
Yes.
Where you came to one of those, and I could tell people who were terrified of drawing, don't worry if it's terrible and you hate it, just go home and plant it.
Yes, exactly. I also think that we can use the seeds as an analogy on business. Because there is quite a similitude on planting something and starting a business. There is as well, like you can start a business in very different ways. For example, if you start something simple, it will be like planting some tomato seeds, which is they're relatively easy to grow. If you actually very ambitious, you'll be planting like an avocado, a stone, which it's actually a lot more time consuming. I tried once to plant, well, to do the toothpick avocado thing, grow,
yeah.
and then I planted into a pot, and then I forgotten about it,
Yeah.
and then obviously it died. So it's a good analogy as well that on a business level you have to keep nurturing those seeds. And of course, there is external factors. There is the drought or hail, or in the business would be like Donald Trump or a financial crisis.
So, for this month's guest interviews, we wanted to ask businesses how they use seeds in what they do, and if there are parallels there in how they grow the business or how they grow their community.
Correct. So we've got Hearth Bakery just down at the other side of the canal. So we asked them if they saw any parallels about running a business and growing food, and also in terms of, because they use quite a lot of those seeds in the pastries, and that's what they told us.
There are lots of parallels between growing seeds from scratch and running a business. It's the sheer vulnerability of both at any point, knowing that it could fail whilst you're pouring everything you have in it to give it life, hoping that what it produces in one way or another will sustain you. In terms of the kind of business we're trying to build, it has the additional layer that could be akin to seed sharing. We're hoping to have influence or plant a seed with everyone who comes to Hearth, something that they can take away and build upon, be that a new skill or learning about a new ingredient to them, or sharing a positive interaction that they in turn will pay forward to the next person they come across.
Well, that's really interesting because it's seeds in the baked goods that they have, and they're delicious, and the seeds of the idea for the business, which is a social enterprise.
Yes, the second question I asked was how do seeds feature in their baking? And that's what they told us.
The techniques we use to cook and bake at Hearth aren't modern. They rely on what's available to us seasonally and how we get the most out of it. Much like how different cultures and groups save their ancestral seeds, it is important that our craft continues and is shared to survive beyond a technological future that we're facing. We held our first seedling swap a few weekends ago. It was a really small turnout because we did it on Easter weekend, but it was enthusiastic nonetheless. A really nice group of people came along. With this and other events we hold, we're looking to start a conversation with those involved about food sovereignty and how do we diversify our own food supplies and resources as an individual, away from unstable commodity markets and supermarket supply chains. And in my opinion, one of the most powerful ways to grow an appreciation for the graft and care it takes to produce food is to grow your own. Even if it's something as small as a pot on your windowsill, it is you taking control and ownership over a small part of your own food supply. And in itself, it's a small act of rebellion against the kind of mainstream capitalist food world that we live in.
And we have already done a little mini field trip to Hearth Bakery to sample some of the baked goods, because
Yes.
well, it would be rude not to.
Absolutely, we have to test what we do.
We've also asked Monica at the Trampery on the Gantry about her outdoor growing space, what she's chosen to grow in the space because of the conditions. It's quite windy out there and it gets a lot of sun, it's a beautiful space, but also how she's used this for growing the community in the workspace.
So basically at the Trampery on the Gantry, creating a community is important, and our outdoor space is possibly where we all come together during the summertime. After a cold winter, the space looked a bit run down, so I got a gardener to help us tidy it up. We use ferns and plants that thrive in shady areas, since we only get sun in the morning, so the space has already brought members together and brightened our garden. The parallel with the building and community is that you need to create the right conditions for things to happen. You have to nurture them consistently so the plants, or actually our community, get the chance to thrive. I'm focused to ensure that our community gets together, they are happy here. And basically, we already, our first community breakfast yesterday was really good, and we received really good comments.
And we pulled all of this together for this month's creative experiment. Often creative work in communications involves using the language of one thing to say something about another so that people can see the connection. And this month we've used seed packet instructions to explain how to grow a brand. Now, I found this fascinating once I got going on it on a number of levels. The timetable for growing something is really important. Though you can usually push it a bit, there are the best times to sow and plant out to give you a good harvest. And in design, we expect somehow to be able to mess with this, but processes are always better for giving people the time they need to do the best possible job. Before planting a seed, it's a good idea to know what it is, what it's for, and checking out where and in what conditions it does best. And the same goes for everything that goes into a visual identity. And then the third thing that struck me is that you plant something and you want a good harvest, so there are instructions for looking after it. Same for a brand, there are guidelines. And like gardening, it doesn't stop, it's something that you look after over time. Visually though, I mean, this is all fascinating stuff, but visually it's the back of a pack, and we call it back a pack in graphic design. And so the result is exactly what it's meant to be. It's functional, it's not very exciting to look at. So it was handy then that I had started by going off-piste with some typography. I wanted to use typefaces to express the differences between growing seeds in different conditions and what happens. And I've used a question mark for this because we never quite know how a seed's going to do. The first one, I used Edwardian script to show my sprawling, leggy sweet peas that came from my over-enthusiastic planting in January.
Brilliant.
I've done one about my beans, which are bolted and grown into a very weird shape. Something about kind of slightly wayward squash. And then an unexpectedly good result from something I didn't expect to turn into anything. So go to our Instagram and you will find the visual results with these. So Narcis, how have you been getting on?
So I wanted to continue exploring the business and planting parallels, and it's quite similar. I think our result of this one would be possibly quite similar. But I've created 3 packages just because it looks quite nice. Also, it kind of references the 3 packages that I've got in my website, for example. And I just did like a packet for flour, which it's the easiest way to plant something and get something. And then I put like another packet that would be bush, would be medium for a little bit more skilled, and then a tree, which obviously a tree requires a lot more effort and more nurturing and more years. And all these 3 parallels would be like from something that is just like a little business to something that you're just thinking about it's going to be a multinational or something.
I think that's really interesting because there are parallels with other kinds of visual communication projects, because you have some little projects that are one-offs,
Yeah.
and those are like the annual seeds that you might grow. They're not going to come up again next year. And then you've got the perennial ones where you're starting something that you're going to develop over time.
Yeah, that's correct. So, Lydia, what about the sound experiment? Did we progress in at all?
Well, I was hoping that the wondrous Vegetable Orchestra might have some inspiration for me. It's been in the news. But it turns out that there are many versions of a ready-made instrument, the seed shaker. And Kew Gardens have a fact sheet on how to make one, aimed at ages 0 to 3. And as I often say that I have to be the 3-year-old in the room, that's just about right for me. So I raided my kitchen and found jars of fennel and pumpkin seeds made for some percussion tryouts. I was having a bit too much fun on that one. I had to stop to get other stuff done.
We'll put all these sounds, maybe some in this podcast, but we're definitely going to do our usual sound bites. So I went a little bit more literal when I was talking earlier about the popping seeds of a popcorn. So I recorded some popcorn exploding.
Excellent.
I did some crackling hazelnuts, and then I poured some lentils into a glass jar. So they are like 3 sounds that they're a bit different. I'm not sure how would all come together, but
Nice things for sampling, though, also a good excuse for a snack.
yes.
Join us next month for another Studio Snack.
See you.
Bye!